In this next section, we are going to look at the aims and objectives of the 1919 Versailles Peace Treaty. The first objective was to officially end the First World War. The foremost objective of the 1919 Versailles Peace Treaty was to formally and legally end the state of war between Germany and the Allied powers. Although fighting had stopped with the armistice of 11th November 1918, an armistice was only a temporary ceasefire and not a permanent peace agreement. The Allies therefore needed a legally binding treaty that would define the post-war relationship with Germany. The treaty officially declared the end of hostilities and established the conditions under which Germany could rejoin the international community. It also settled issues relating to prisoners of war, occupied territories, and diplomatic relations. This objective was successfully achieved because the treaty formally concluded the conflict between Germany and the victorious Allies. However, many historians argue it ended the fighting without resolving the deep political, economic, and psychological causes of the war. The second objective was to prevent Germany from starting another war. Another major objective was to ensure that Germany could never again threaten European security through military aggression. Before 1914, Germany had built one of the strongest armies and navies in Europe, and many Allied leaders believed that its military strength had encouraged its aggressive foreign policy. To achieve this aim, the treaty imposed strict military restrictions. Germany's army was limited to only 100,000 volunteer soldiers. Conscription was abolished. Tanks, military, aircraft, submarines, poison gas, and heavy artillery were prohibited, while the navy was drastically reduced. The Rhineland was demilitarized, and the Allied troops occupied parts of it for several years. Initially, these measures greatly weakened Germany's military capacity. However, by the 1930s, Adolf Hitler openly violated these restrictions by rearming Germany, reintroducing conscription, and remilitarizing the Rhinelands in 1936. Consequently, although the treaty temporarily limited German military power, it ultimately failed to prevent another major war. The third objective was to punish Germany. The Allied powers, particularly France, believed Germany should be punished for the enormous destruction and suffering caused by the war. Millions had died, industries had been destroyed, and entire regions, especially in northern France and Belgium, had been devastated. The treaty therefore imposed severe penalties on Germany. Article 231, commonly known as the War Guilt Clause, forced Germany to accept responsibility for causing the war. Germany was also required to surrender territory, reduce its armed forces, and pay huge reparations. Many Germans regarded these terms as humiliating and unjust because they believed responsibility for the war should have been shared among several European powers. Rather than promoting reconciliation, these harsh punishments created resentment and nationalism, which extremist leaders such as Adolf Hitler later exploited. Thus, while the Allies succeeded in punishing Germany, the severity of the punishment had dangerous long-term consequences. The fourth objective was to compensate the victorious Allied powers. The war had left Britain, France, Belgium, and other Allied countries with massive financial burdens and widespread physical destruction. One objective of the treaty was therefore to ensure that Germany compensated the victorious nations for their losses. Germany was required to pay reparations amounting to approximately 132 billion gold marks. These payments were intended to rebuild destroyed infrastructure, compensate civilians, and repay wartime debts. Although reparations provided some financial assistance to the Allies, they placed enormous pressure on the German economy. Germany experienced inflation, unemployment, and eventually the catastrophic hyperinflation of 1923. Many economists argue that excessive reparations weakened Germany economically without fully compensating the Allies for their enormous losses. The fifth objective was to restore and maintain lasting peace. The treaty aimed to establish a stable and lasting peace by removing the causes of future wars and creating a new balance of power in Europe. The Allies believed that by weakening Germany, settling territorial disputes, and creating international institutions such as the League of Nations, Europe would enjoy permanent peace. In the short run, Europe experienced relative peace during the 1920s. However, the treaty failed to eliminate political extremism, economic instability, and nationalist grievances. Instead of its provisions, many of its provisions generated bitterness that created directly to the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939. Therefore, the objective of creating lasting peace was only partially achieved. The next objective was to redraw the political map of Europe. One of the treaty's most important aims was to reorganize Europe's political boundaries according to the principle of national self-determination promoted by US President Woodrow Wilson. Several new states emerged, including Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Germany lost territories such as Alsace and Lorraine to France, Rupen and Malmade to Belgium, northern Schleswig to Denmark, and parts of West Prussia to Posen and Posen to Poland. The Polish corridor was created to give Poland access to the Baltic Sea. While these changes satisfied some national groups, they also left millions of ethnic minorities living outside their own states. This created new border disputes and ethnic tensions that later contributed to European instability. The next objective was to establish the League of Nations. The treaty sought to create an international organization dedicated to maintaining world peace through diplomacy, collective security, and peaceful settlement of disputes. The League of Nations was established in 1920 as part of the Versailles settlement. Its objectives included preventing wars, encouraging disarmament, promoting international cooperation, and protecting smaller nations from aggression. Although the League achieved some success in resolving minor international disputes during the 1920s, it ultimately failed because it lacked military power and major countries such as the United States never joined. During the 1930s, it proved unable to stop aggression by Japan, Italy, and Germany. The next objective was to weaken Germany's political and economic power. The Allies believed Germany had become too powerful economically and politically before 1914, enabling it to dominate continental Europe. The treaty, therefore, deprived Germany of important industrial regions and colonies. It lost the coal-rich Saar Basin, which was placed under League administration, Alsace and Lorraine, and all overseas colonies. Reparations, territorial losses, and military restrictions further weakened Germany's economy and international influence. These measures significantly reduced Germany's strength in the early 1920s. However, economic hardship fueled political instability, weakened the Weimar Republic, and helped extremist movements gain popular support, eventually allowing Hitler to rise to power. Then the next objective was to reward the victorious Allied powers. Another objective was to reward the Allied countries for their sacrifices and victory during the war. France recovered Alsace and Lorraine. Britain and France received former German colonies as League of Nations mandates. Belgium gained Eupen and Malmade, while Germany obtained Germany's Pacific Islands. While Japan obtained Germany's Pacific Islands north of the equator and rights in the Shandong region in China. Although these rewards satisfied many Allied governments, they also disappointed countries such as Italy, which believed it had not received all the territories it had been promised. This dissatisfaction later contributed to the rise of fascism under Benito Mussolini. Finally, the agreement was signed to create a new international order. The treaty sought to establish a new international system based on diplomacy, collective security, international law, disarmament, and peaceful cooperation, instead of secret alliances and military competition. The settlement attempted to replace the old European balance of power politics with a rules-based international order centered on the League of Nations. It also promoted the principle that aggression should be discouraged through collective action by all nations. Although this represented a major innovation in international relations, the new system proved fragile. Weak enforcement, economic crisis, the Great Depression, and the rise of aggressive dictatorships undermined the international order established at Versailles. By 1939, Europe had descended into another global conflict. So in simple terms, the Treaty of Versailles achieved several immediate objectives. It formally ended the First World War, punished Germany, reduced its military strength, redrew Europe's boundaries, established the League of Nations, and temporarily strengthened the victorious Allied powers. However, its long-term success was limited. The harsh treatment of Germany created resentment, economic hardship, and political instability that contributed to the rise of Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany. The League of Nations lacked the authority to enforce peace, while unresolved territorial and ethnic disputes remained across Europe. Consequently, many historians regard the Treaty of Versailles as a peace settlement that successfully ended one war but failed to secure a lasting peace, paving the way for the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939.